Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Dive Talk. This is episode number 30. And, well, you saw the title. We won't be talking about sunshine and rainbows in this episode. But, a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, we started a series in our YouTube channel, Dive Talk Media YouTube channel, and called Cave Diver React. Me and Woody are both certified CCR cave divers, and I think I saw a video. Everything started because I saw a video about Jacob's Well, which is this sinkhole slash cave in Texas, and it had millions and millions and millions of views. And after watching it for like 10 minutes or so, I realized that there were so many issues and inconsistencies and just plain ignorance about cave diving, and they made it sound like it was suicide and all this other stuff. So I decided to react a cave diver react video, and then that essentially became requests to make other ones. And Woody has now hosted a video, and I've hosted a couple of videos as well, and we keep getting a ton of traction. But one of the things that I notice is that people are saying, some of the comments on the video, for example, say like, why would you go diving into the Devil's Eye? Like, that's just, what are you doing? And for us who go to Ginnie Springs all the time, where Little Devil, Devil's Eye, Devil's Ear is, those entrances to the cave system there, I do you ever feel like scared about going into the Devil's Eye or whatever? Like, that's just
no, but the reason I don't feel scared, and probably the reason you don't feel scared, is we're really trained and did tremendous preparation on every single dive before we go in.
Right.
It's not that we're not concerned or taking it as blasé, like
Right.
that it's not a technical dive with a lot of current in an overhead environment that's going to lose light. We're not saying that. We don't feel scared because, man, think about the preparation that you did to be able to get to the point where you don't feel scared.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the difference.
Absolutely. That is the difference. And, one of the things that I notice is that in a lot of cases, the places that are the deadliest for divers don't have names like Devil's Eye and Devil's Ear and, stuff like that. They have names like Blue Hole. And Blue Hole in Egypt is considered to be the deadliest diving site. So I found an article from Life magazine that is titled, "The Middle East Has the World's Deadliest Diving Site. This man recovers the bodies drowned in it." So it's more about the person who goes and recovers the people that drown in this hole, because apparently it's routine. Like, it just happens all the time. And that's a little concerning. So I wanted to, go through the article with you and talk about why you think people are drowning there. Like, what's up with that? Why that place and not the Blue Hole in Belize or in whatever? Because there's a lot of different countries that have Blue Hole. But why is it that this place is so deadly? So let's get started. So he says, when he's not instructing technical diving, Tarek Omar recovers the bodies of other divers from Dahab's Blue Hole. The reporter, I'm gonna butcher this name. I think it's Naveen Gonaim, sits down with a record-setting technical diver to talk missions in Diver's Cemetery. By the way, Diver's Cemetery is the nickname of this site. Ghost stories and pushing the boundaries of human limitations. All right, so back to the article. Somewhere beyond the earth, yellows and sandy browns that stretch into infinity and Sinai, its prodigious coppery mountains tower over the vast blues of the Red Sea. Along the southeast coast sits the town of Dahab, which is Arabic for gold, in case you wanted to know that little piece of information. In all its understated glory, a hippie commune, a diver's mecca, a bastion of Bohemia, and a backpacker paradise, the real gold, however, is found in the town's otherworldly pristine landscapes, imploring you to believe in great things. Okay, so maybe we shouldn't read the whole article, because then we'll be here for a long time, because we want to talk about the Blue Hole, right? And it says, beneath the surface, the sea remains true to its treacherous nature. Many venture to these inhospitable depths, defying their own human limitation for a few moments of respite from all the mundane banalities and constitute the bane of our existence. Anyway, this writer is going into it, but it's starting to talk about some of the people that died in this hole. Two of such adventurers were Irish technical divers Conor O'Regan and Martin Gara. The deep came calling before either one of them turned 25. So before their 25th birthday, they went there. Their bodies were found locked in an embrace 102 meters deep. So over 330 feet deep. Inside of Dahab's infamous blue hole. So, again, the hole seems to have been claiming lives for a long time. It's pretty deep. Right here in the article, it says that this guy, Tarek Omar, the person that recovers the bodies, did a dive there and set a record of 209-meter dives. 209 meters. That's deep. What is that, like 670 feet or something?
Yeah, that is deep.
209 meters, which is pretty extreme. So over 150 divers have lost their lives in that blue hole. It's often considered to be the most dangerous diving site in the world. In the last 10 years, earning the submarine sinkhole the ominous moniker Diver's Cemetery. You can see their names inscribed in commemorative plates or plaques embedded into a mountain by the deadly dive site. So anyway, a lot of people have died there, over 150. David Shaw, which is the video that you recorded, Woody, for Cave Diver Reacts, famously died at this site trying to recover a body at 270 meters. So it's a very, very deep. And it wasn't this. It was in South Africa. His thing was in South Africa. But holes like this have claimed lives of even expert divers, like David Shaw, as you mentioned. So you have some of the facts about this hole. Let's talk about how deep it is and where's the attraction. There's one particular thing that seems to be the one attracting the most people that perish at this site.
Well, I've been thinking about this. Why is this particular blue hole the deadliest? Why does it have such a high diver fatality rate? And everybody has a different opinion on this, by the way. There's various explanations for its high accident rate, but here's my take. It was controlled, first of all, for a very long time by Israel. It was a very popular tourist diving destination because it has extremely easy access. Really easy to dive. It's a shallow opening to the sea at 20 feet. It's pretty cool. It's beautiful. It has a lot of coral. It has a lot of reef fish. Free divers love it. So it's really easy to access with basic scuba diving gear. There's your problem. What happens is that all of a sudden, these scuba divers get into it, and when they first go into it, it has very little current. So it's super easy, super mellow dive site. And they're like, man, this is awesome. But then they go down and they continue, and they notice that it continues to go deeper and deeper. They may either hear about or discover the famous Ark. The Ark. What the Ark is it's an ark, it's an entrance way to a cave. That's what makes it a blue hole. A blue hole, by the way, is an opening from the sea that ultimately will lead down into a cave, typically brackish or fresh water. So they look beautiful, by the way, because they're just this big, giant blue hole, this void in the earth. Okay, so now all of a sudden you've got these divers that I talked about that are not trained and do not have the proper gear in this beautiful, easy to access blue hole. that decide to explore the Ark because they can't really tell that easily how deep they are other than by looking at their computer. They easily can get narked because listen to this. The ceiling of the Ark starts at 181 feet. And there is really good visibility. So there's a good shot that they can see it. If they're at a recreational depth limit of 130 feet and they look down, they may see it. And it's an attraction to go down there. Now you're talking about a seafloor with a wall. This blue hole has a surrounding wall that drops down to 3,300 feet in depth.
Yikes.
So that doesn't look very deep relative to the total depth. So this draw of bringing all these recreational divers down into the Ark, now they're at 181 feet. So they're bent. They're narked. They're definitely narked. They may not say they're narked,
right,
but they're narked. They're on regular air and they're narked. Now they're entering into an overhead environment that starts at 181 feet, and there's your problem. The odds are you're going to have a problem. You're narked, you're confused. You may not have a backup light. You may enter it with no light. You may have gotten into this blue hole with no lights whatsoever. They can get lost in there quickly. They're confused immediately. Panic sets in, and they die.
Yeah, because on a pretty sunny day, it might not feel like you need a light.
You could probably see the Ark all the way. It's shining, beautiful light. That is a super clear blue hole with current moving in and out of it, so it keeps it clear. And by the way, the current's another problem. That could be that is a sea cave, so you could have a tidal current change in there, which can siphon you further into the Ark. That's really dangerous, right? You know that a siphon means it's bringing you in. So there's your problem. Unfortunately, it's not a cave site. If it was just a cave site, it would be great. I have heard that since Egypt has taken over the Sinai, that changed. Israel gave that back to the Egyptians. They now regulate this site, that they're actually more strict with it, that they will look at people's certifications and regulate who is going in and out of there as of recently because of these fatalities. I don't know for sure, though, if they're really limited to people that are cave divers or people that have certain certifications that allow them to reach different depths, but they are enforcing more regulations at the site that were not being enforced for sure.
Right.
I have to tell you, by the Israelis, it was just, if you go in there, you're going in there at your own risk. And it's not, again, marked or known purely as a technical cave diving site. It's super easy to access.
Right. And also the interesting part about this hole that I notice is that it doesn't only makes it prone to accident for new divers. So this is not one of those where we're like, well, if you're inexperienced, if you're brand new, you might drown. No, like one of the famous deaths at this site was Russian-Israeli diver and diving instructor. Actually, he was a diving instructor, Yuri Lipsky, right? So he went into this hole. He was trying to do super deep dives. He was warned not to do so. But I don't know if I never met Yuri. Obviously, I can't speak for himself. But I think that in a lot of cases, what happens with instructors and stuff is overconfident, right? You're sort of like, I'm an instructor already. I got this. I don't have to be trained. And I think for days, the guy that we're talking about, Omar, for days, he tried to convince him to get some training on deep diving, use mixed gases. Like if you're going to go through the depth of the arch, make sure that you know what you're doing. And he was very reckless, Yuri. And he went into this site filming with a camera mounted in his helmet and basically filmed his own death.
But he wasn't on mixed gas or technical dive gear.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. I mean, I'm reading some more information here. It says since 1982, the blue hole has become, 1982, by the way, is when Israel returned it to Egypt for peace. for a peace settlement. So since 82, the Blue Hole has become extremely busy with recreational divers and is dived almost every day by recreational divers. And that's fine, except for, again, that enables them to have access to non-recreational parts, which is entered by this arc. And I'm reading more commentary now, and I actually didn't even notice, but that's part of the reason why they're saying also is that it's just got so many recreational divers go there, and they go into that arc, which is an extreme dive, and many accidents and fatalities, have happened right in that part.
I think it would be awesome for a Trimix dive, right?
By the way, they didn't even record all of the fatalities. It's saying here that they don't even know truly how many there are. It could be as many as a couple hundred. So it's and it includes some snorkeling deaths at the surface, unrelated to the diving arc. People are trying to set those free diving records, so there's been some shallow water blackout stuff going on in there as well. So it's not just related to the dive community.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the site sounds pretty awesome to go and just do rebreathers and deep diving. That's the way I thought about it. I think it will be interesting and humbling also to see all these plaques basically that are about people that died, in this whole.
By the way, we should dive it.
Yes.
As much I want to talk about the other side of it. This is an absolutely awesome technical dive site.
That's
and
what
it
I'm
even
saying.
goes on to say here, so let's talk about the positives.
Yes.
It says, by the way, the arc presents little problem for suitably qualified technical divers. The main challenge is gas management because any lingering or errors at this depth, plus the time needed to negotiate the horizontal section, will need more than a single tank of breathing gas to do safely. If gas is not carefully planned, the diver may lack sufficient air for the deco stops or run out of air altogether. So what it's saying there is, hey, if you're a technical diver, it's not even that long of a horizontal section. No problem. It's actually relatively easy. It's a much easier site to dive even, Gus, than the dive sites that we dive in Florida. But recreational divers are not going into Jenny Springs cave section.
Right.
That's the difference.
For sure.
So really, it's saying, it's got such huge notoriety and it attracts divers that are just not trained, and so many of them that's what's caused the problem. But we absolutely should dive this, especially on our rebreathers, and you should be a trained cave diver. So not just that you're technically trained, that you have sufficient gas, but if you cross into that arc that's going to go into a non-light zone, you really need to be a cave diver. And then it's actually a relatively
easy cave, I guess.
I would call it a no more complicated cave than any of the other caves we've dove. Its reputation has nothing to do with the fact that it itself is like this crazy, crazy, dangerous site. It's that people go in there without the training. Or even those that are trained have pushed the limits to some crazy level beyond anything we would do, right? We could do a normoxic dive in there.
Right. Yep, and that's what the article says. So it says, despite having been demilitarized in the 60s, technical diving is still considered an extreme sport, and so is cave diving in Egypt, by the way. To dive the Blue Hole, you need to master both deep diving and cave diving.
And normoxic trimix.
Right.
Because you can't...
Diving, yeah.
The deep diving, right.
Yeah,
you can't just go
beyond the recreational level. That's what we're
exactly.
talking about.
Because the entrance to the cave, you need to be on helium, or you are going to be narked out of your mind. And so you got to be cave dive, as you just said, cave and at least mixed gas.
This has to be awesome. I mean, listen to this. It's an 80-meter wide and almost 100-meter deep opening in the reef. I mean, how awesome is that?
I mean, awesome. I want to dive this for sure.
Yep.
I should have dove it earlier. But
the Blue Hole is on every diver's bucket list. Crystal clear, minimal undertow waters, which allow for good visibility even at great depths. which is probably why people see the arch and they're like, it's not that far. It's right there.
Well, let me add to that comment you just made. That's a really good point you just made. It actually says time taken to pass through the arch may be underestimated. The tunnel appears shorter than it actually is because of the clarity of the water, to your point and my point. The light at the outside end and the lack of reference points, divers report that the tunnel appears to be less than 10 meters long, but has been measured as 26 meters. Moreover, there is frequently a current flowing inward through the arc into the blue hole. That means it's a siphon.
Yep.
So it takes you into it, increasing the time it takes to swim through and increasing gas consumption. So this, again, is part of the problem of why it's attracted non-trained divers.
Exactly. Let's see. Yeah, so
I mean, it goes on and on to discuss.
If you just see a swim through, basically an arch or whatever that is 30 feet long, so 10 meters, and there's no current and all of that, I take it that people that have done a ton of those swim throughs would look at that and be like, man, I can nail that. It's so easy. Like, I know it's deep, but how hard can it be? And then it's not 10 meters, but it's 27, which now you're looking at almost 90 feet instead of 30. And on top of that, the current is keeping you back, which means that in order to move through the water, now you have to work harder, which means you're breathing faster, which means you're going through your air faster. So all of those are a combination of bad things to happen at that depth.
Yes, and so to chime into that, it kind of goes further, and this is such a great point that I'm reading on this one article. It goes on to say, because of all these things we're discussing, temptation to dive on a single gas tank is one of the largest reasons why so many deaths have happened there. Theoretically, the arch can be dived on a single 11-liter tank, and often has been. But, and this is the problem, because you can do it, it says, but it's dangerously close to the minimum gas requirement for the dive and depends upon all of this going perfect. You got to have a totally relaxed diver with a low gas consumption rate, committed to having no errors, no hesitations during the entire dive, and you're narked out of your mind. Diving the arc without a staged tank and without rigorous gas planning has resulted in drowning or DCS. And remember, you had to be able to do that calm, cool, no errors, while you're narked out of your mind. You are going to be severely narked. So it looks amazing, and the arc looks so benign. I mean, I'm looking at pictures of it. It's like, oh, man, no problem. I could swim right down to that and go in that arc. It's just right there. It looks like it's close because you're looking at it relative to a 3,000-foot deep wall. So another 40 feet down looks like
nothing.
It's just the scale is amazing.
Yep, absolutely, man. It's
and then it goes on to talk about Yuri, the notable depth of Yuri and how it happened, the Russian-Israeli diver, and I know there's a whole video on that. And now
I remember reading about this a long time ago, and it was something like his BCD didn't work.
He had an uncontrolled descent.
Okay.
So he had an uncontrolled descent. He carried a video camera, which was on. He filmed his death, which the mom wanted it recovered and got it recovered. And can you imagine? She had to watch that film of her son's death, but that by having that, it's the best known death in the world because it was filmed. Sadly, the whole thing was filmed. The video shows Yuri in an involuntary and uncontrolled descent, eventually landing on the seafloor at 115 meters, where he then panics, removes his regulator, because you're narked out of your mind. You're not thinking anymore. Wow. So at that depth, you take your regulator out and try to fill your buoyancy compensator, probably orally, right? He's removed his regulator, so maybe he was trying to do an oral fill of it, and he was unable to rise. At 115 meters, he would have been subject to severe nitrogen narcosis, which may which I would say not may have, I would say impaired his
For
judgment, induced hallucinations, and caused panic and confusion. Yuri Lipsky had a single tank, assumed to be air, at 115 meters. That's 300 plus feet. I don't know. You're just at you. There's no way you could be thinking. They recovered his body the following day by Tarek Omar, one of the world's foremost deepwater divers, at the request of Lipsky's mother. Omar had earlier twice warned Lipsky against attempting the dive. He was told, do not do this. On the bottom, Omar found Lipsky's helmet camera still intact. The video it contained is available on YouTube, and it's entitled Fatal Dive Accident Caught on Tape. And there's more and more commentary from Omar about what we're saying. Yeah. It's not that complicated, this one. You know, when I do a reaction to this video, it's going to be a rather short video, which is great. People won't have to go through a long video because it's really summarized in this podcast. If you need to know a dive site before you go in it, a dive site that you just think is benign because it has easy access and looks beautiful, but has a reputation like this, something must be there, right? Some logical reason must exist for why so many people died. You can't think that you can beat science. We have done now a number of shows on this topic and a number of these reaction videos, as you call them, on this topic, that people for some reason think they can beat it or they're going to push the limit. And I always keep saying to myself, why? What is the motivation? It's either ego, to come back and be able to brag about it.
Right.
That's a big draw. Like, I just want to be able to say I did it and look at me.
Yeah.
Which is deadly usually. Or they're just trying to, which I don't think this is not usually the case. What is the real limits of the body? Can we show that the body can really handle more than what has been stated?
Or my body can handle more.
Or my body, but that's the ego.
Well, yeah.
And I just think that this site is one of those sites that easily leads people to do that because it's such easy access and it's an absolutely gorgeous dive site.
It's awesome.
And for Gus, we've got to dive this site. I don't want people to think, oh man, okay, this is one to stay away from. No, this is one to absolutely dive with proper training. I mean, you technical divers out there with rebreather training, with cave training, wow. Talk about magnificent.
Looks awesome.
I mean, we were in one dive, we're going to get to experience incredible ocean diving with gorgeous reef and an amazing cave system that I don't know. I don't want to misstate this. I assume it's going to turn brackish or fresh water. So, you know, that's the other thing I wonder. Let's think about this for a second. I'm just talking out loud. If this Yuri was originally weighted for seawater, ocean water, when he got into the cave, which turns into brackish or fresh water, you're way overweighted at that point. Caves that are sea caves, typically the salinity changes.
That's true.
You're not going to have the same level of salinity. So now all of a sudden he's with a giant camera, finds himself entering in the arc, and now all of a sudden he's way overweighted, and his BCD, and we don't know this, either wasn't working anymore or did not have enough lift power, and he was an arc, so he didn't ditch weights. Right. If he had ditched weights, though, think about this. Let's say he ditched weights. He gets out of the freshwater part of the cave. Now at that 180 feet, when he comes out of the arc, he hits that halocline back to the saltwater level and starts flying to the surface, blowing through deco stops, air embolism. He was doomed either way.
Yeah.
So if we are doing this dive, this is a question for us. We need to make sure we have enough lift power to handle the weight that we're going to be using for the saltwater part when we then get into the freshwater part.
Right.
And we train for that, by the way, as you know, right? That's why we don't take baby SMBs. An SMB can be a massive additional ability to give you more lift. So
Sure.
even though you think you're going into a cave on this one, and why would I need an SMB? There's a reason.
Yep.
Take more lift power on this site than you need. I am, by the way, talking out loud and having these thoughts live on our show as I'm looking at Gus. Because I'm really thinking this out more of all these, like, why? Why would he have this uncontrollable descent? And it's starting to make a little bit more sense to me as we think about this incredibly cool dive site.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel bad, of course, that he died. But
Of course.
Again, if you read a lot about it, I remember reading that they just kept telling him, like, dude, this is not a one tank, let me go in perfect and come out type of dive. But I think just going back to echo what you said about the whole getting narked, everyone knows people that I don't get narked people, right? It's like, you know what? I don't get narked. I've been down to 130, 140. Like, I don't get narked. This past weekend, I was down in Florida co-teaching an advanced nitrox and trimix class, recreational trimix and nitrox class with Doug Ebersol. And one of the biggest things that we talked about is narcosis and how it affects everyone. Everyone. And you cannot get immune to it no matter how much you dive. You don't get used to it. Your body doesn't get used to it.
You do not. There's no scientific evidence whatsoever that, being narc doesn't bother me. Because you're not doing anything when you're...
And Doug told this story, and I wish he was here to tell it, but I think it was in the Galapagos or whatever it was, that there was this guy on a dive side that loved when he had people on the boat that said that they don't get narked. He loved that. It's like, oh, I got one of those guys that I don't get narc guy. Okay, just with me, like you and me. And apparently they would go down to like 130 or whatever. And at 130 or whatever, there was a plaque for someone who died on that dive site. And the bet was right before they went on the site. It says, look, somebody died in this thing. There's a plaque down there. And he says something like in loving memory of whatever. Anyone who can remember what he said when we get back on the boat will die for free today. Like, if you can remember without writing it down on a slate or whatever and cheating, if you can go down there, read the plaque, and then come back up here and tell me what he says, you don't pay today. That's how they did it. And he said that 100% of people fail the test.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about the ones that are like, I don't get narked. But again, this plaque says, like I was reading one right here, it says, don't let fear stand in the way of your dreams. That's what the plaque says, and it is for a guy named James Paul Smith, who died in 2003. So it would be something like that. You have to go down there, read what he says. If you can remember that by the time we get back to the boat, you can do it.
Yeah, I want to put this in perspective because I've talked a lot about this in deep dive classes that I've taught. What we do is we actually try to get people to experience a little bit of the feeling of being narked in a deep dive class, a recreational deep dive class to 130 feet. I would tell you that the vast majority of people will tell you that they don't feel narked unless you give them a task to prove that they're narked. And I think this is important because there's a huge misconception about what it feels like to be narked. Like this obvious feeling like, oh man, I'm drunk now, and now I can't think, and it's so obvious that I'm narked. You see, when you're narked, for me, let me tell you what I feel like when I'm narked. I actually feel very little difference other than I'm super relaxed. I'm not out of my mind because I'm not going to let myself get that narked. I'm just more relaxed. I feel even calmer. And if I have to do something, I kind of have to close my eyes for a second in my mask and concentrate for an extra few seconds before doing that task. Even something like, okay, I'm going to go back up now. I'm going to let some air out of my BCD. I have to really, really try my hardest to concentrate on it. It's not obvious when you're narked. It's not like I'm going from feeling normal to oh man, I'm wasted. It's not like that at all. So we get this misperception that people think they're not narked and it doesn't affect me. If you give them a task, like I use that kid's puzzle with the plastic pieces where you have to take the triangle and put it in the ball and match up the triangle and the square, and I time them doing it on the surface, and then I time them doing it at 130 feet. I've never had anybody that's not way slower at 130 feet. And then they'll come back and say, oh, now I know what the feeling is. Well, when you're diving, if you have a complication or you have to do various tasks, which you certainly do in technical diving, and you're narked, you're in danger because you could possibly not be able to do those things. And I really hope that helps what I'm saying for all those that say that I'm not narked, Gus, because it's not obvious that you're narked. I'm telling you,
right? You
may have been narked and never known you were narked.
Right.
That's the problem with gas narcosis.
And I think the biggest misconception about narcosis is that it's like being drunk. It is not the same effect as being drunk. No. I think that when people say that, what really means is that, like getting drunk, narcosis is different for everyone. It follows the same principles. Some people get drunk with one beer, some people get drunk with, they have to drink 100 beers. When some people get super dizzy, sick, I have to throw up. Some people get happy. Some people get, sleepy, mad, whatever it is. Different effects on different people, and you never know what the effects are going to be for you until you go through it. Narcosis works pretty much the same way. It affects people differently. It affects people at different depths. Like somebody at 80 might start feeling the effects of getting narked, but somebody might take a little bit deeper in order to feel the effects. And the effects could be strong or very low or whatever it is, but everyone gets narked, just like everyone gets drunk. I mean, if you drink enough, you'll get drunk no matter who you are.
Yes, but the only difference about what you said, I just want to be careful, okay? Yes. I want to make sure they hear this is it's different than getting drunk because there are people that will drink 1 or 2 beers and not be drunk.
Right.
There is nobody that will reach 130 feet on air that will not be narked. 100%
right.
of the human being, unless you're not a human, you are narked.
Right.
This is science. I don't care who's out there, who wants to brag on my Facebook, who wants to put in all those silly other forums that I read, and I don't comment a lot because it's so ridiculous. I don't get narked till I get to 200 feet
on air.
Listen, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to have the discussion with you. It's black and white. It's not gray. You're narked. Unlike some people that drink 1 or 2 or 3 beers are not drunk. They're not. You are narked at 130 feet on air. End of story, no matter who you are in this world.
There's a really cool video I watched of a deep water class down to 130 or 40 meters for those of you outside of the U.S. This instructor, essentially, the test is write your name backwards. Like he has this little note that says write your name backwards. So people will take the slate out.
That's a cool one. I got to remember that.
And then he starts, like this guy named Victor, he was recording it himself, with his GoPro. So you get his perspective like a student. So he looks at the instructor, and the instructor is like, write your name backwards. So he pulls his slate and starts writing it, and he's like, VT. No,
that's great.
And he does it like 6 times, and then he's like, thumbs up. Like, I'm out. Like, I can't.
And it'd be cool. I'm going to use that. That's awesome. And then what I would say to him is, now go on the surface.
Yeah.
After the dive's over, hey, by the way, write your name backwards and watch him just knock it right out. That's right. A great one. I'm going to use that in the future.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was really cool. Now, obviously, if your name is, I don't know, Bob.
Then, you may get it.
Bob is easy.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but Bridget or
Right.
something like that. Oh boy,
That's yeah.
And how often do you write your name backwards? So I think you have to think about it. Like, can you do it? Yes, no matter what your name is.
Yeah, that's why I don't want him to. I don't want him to do it on the surface first.
No,
I actually want to surprise attack him, like you said, at 130 feet, and then later on the surface, have them do it, and they'll be like, "Yeah, there's no problem."
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Or maybe on the surface you do your last name, so they don't repeat the same thing. It's a different word, but still it's the same skill, which is you have to think, you have to reverse the order.
That's cool.
But anyway, I saw. Hopefully, none of them listen to this show.
That's really cool.
And start practicing ahead of time.
No, I actually really wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy this show because we're talking about one topic on one site again.
Right.
But boy, it really brings up so many great points. And I really am glad that we're able, you and I, to have these kind of conversations. But, we would not be able to have these conversations, Gus. I want you to realize this. A year ago, I would not have been able to have these conversations with you.
Right.
Because until you have the training to know the difference, to be able to analyze, to say, yeah, now I know why we have to do these things, because the whys and the value of any instructor should be the most important thing. Now I get it. Now I know why. So now I can look back on these situations and I can have an intelligent, informed conversation with you about these topics. Otherwise, what happens is it can turn into a silly argument from the uninformed. Well, you know what? I've been down to 150 feet, Woody, and it's ridiculous. It's not a problem. And not you, but a person that hasn't had training tends to make those types of comments easier, quicker as a reaction. And you can't really have a rational conversation back with them.
It's hard
because it's all emotion for them at that point, and they don't have the training like we're talking intelligently based upon actual factual training. So I'm really glad that we have that training because we wouldn't be able to analyze these types of things.
Yeah, for sure. There's one more thing that I wanted to add and get your thoughts on as well is, things that contribute to narcosis. Like, even though you as a person get an effect of narcosis, you could feel a different effect at another dive because there is some things that contribute to narcosis, like anxiety, for example, fatigue. If you're super tired, 130, swimming against the current versus drift diving,
you're sucking in more and more of that nitrogen, man.
Exactly. Drugs, right? Alcohol.
Cold.
That's right.
Getting
cold.
Your body's not circulating that blood nearly the same rate.
Right. Even psychologically, right? Like we said, anxiety, things like that, they can mess you up and cause you to get concerned, breathe faster, etc. And that's why I think through SSI, for example, the agency that we teach for, the whole comfort through repetition really helps, because the more you practice something and the better you get at a skill, the more it comes out natural.
For sure.
The less the chance of you like getting startled and like getting all concerned and nervous that I'm about to deploy my SMB. I haven't done this in a long time. I don't know what to do. Like, just take it easy.
Yeah,
right?
But did you notice that if you talk to really well-trained technical divers, they don't talk in this cocky way. Mm-hmm. They actually would warn people not to do something like this. It's so funny how the best in the world in diving, they won't take those risks without properly planning.
Absolutely not.
So the greats aren't pushing the limits. It's the people that aren't experienced, aren't trained, that are pushing the limits.
That's right.
You listeners, doesn't that make you scratch your head and say, maybe I shouldn't? If the greatest of the great in diving are not doing it and are well trained for this stuff, that they're not doing these types of dives without the proper equipment, without the proper gas, without the proper training, wouldn't you just logically say to yourself, even if you don't believe it, that there must be something to it if they aren't willing to do it?
Yeah.
Logic.
These guys can do whatever they want,
They can do
They're
any
way
dive
better
they
than
want.
everyone else, and they still don't
And
do
they
that.
don't do it without planning. I just picture my cave instructor, Brian Kekuk. He unbelievably prepares for every single dive he does in those Abacos caves that he's dove thousands of times.
Yeah.
The same dive. He never, ever doesn't go through his estrals. He never doesn't have the right amount of gas. He never doesn't have the right amount of line. He never doesn't review those charts before he goes in. You're talking about the greatest in the world, perhaps, in cave diving.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting for sure. But yeah, in regards to this site, which is what the show is all about, I would love to go.
Absolutely, we should go and dive it.
There's a bunch of places in Egypt too, in the Red
Yes.
Sea, that will be awesome. Just like not cave related, but just open ocean, right?
Yes,
we should
for
find
sure.
a liveaboard or something.
There are some great ones out there. I think our dive
it up.
shop's actually running a trip there. Sea Ventures
That's right.
is running a trip to Egypt. I don't think it's not a technical depth
It's not a
trip.
tech
They
trip,
would not
though.
be diving these, so
Yeah.
that's fine. That's okay. They're not going to take you to places and let you go into like this blue hole at those depths because they're just not going to do it, which is great.
Right.
But there are technical dives in Egypt as well, and I believe they have all the
Dive shops and all
gas
of that.
sources and sorbent oxygen and helium that we would need.
Yeah, actually, I think I saw some posts and stuff like that from people like trying to get a shop there that is super rebreather friendly, so they can become
Is
like
there
a
one?
center.
By the way, I don't know.
Well, Aaron from Dirty Dozen is working with a
Oh,
shop
yeah,
over there
sure,
too,
okay.
to set it up.
Then that would have it.
That would have it for sure. So I'm excited about that. We'll see when it happens. But yeah, I mean, it looks awesome. The blue hole in Belize also looks awesome, but that one is not as deep and I guess not as deadly because it's just looks like a perfectly round hole.
Yeah, and
this
I
blue
don't think
hole
there's a
sounds pretty
transition with the fresh and salt. There has to be a halocline level
Yeah,
for it to be a blue hole, I believe. Don't shoot me out there, everybody, if I'm wrong on that. I think that typically is the
geologists be like, that's not exactly
case.
marine
Okay,
geologist.
and I could be wrong on that. I'm going to admit that right now.
Fake news. All right. Well, that's pretty
Cool
much
show.
all we wanted to talk about today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back in a couple weeks. I want to record an episode about ice diving. Woody was ice diving,
Okay.
as probably if you've listened to the show before.
I will.
I've never
happily do
done
that.
it.
Yeah.
I've never done it. Here's the thing. Like, you went to it. I had no interest in going ice diving, right? I'm like, okay, it looks cool. Like, after going diving in Iceland, I'm like, next thing will be, I guess, diving under ice, just because,
Right.
I thought Iceland was great. But then you went to do the class, and man, it's so much work. It looks like a lot of work. So I'm like, now I'm not interested. Now I don't want to do ice diving. But then you came and you're like, that was the worst. Like,
Well,
I had
We'll
vertigo.
do a show. We'll do a show, and I'm going to explain how it was an amazingly run class, like
Right.
one of the best run classes I've ever taken. But it's really, really harsh and hard work. I will explain all that goes in to do a 15-minute ice dive. You're going to be out there from 9 in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon to do a 15-minute dive. That's what the show will
That's
discuss.
crazy.
How could that be, right? You're like, what? Come on. 8 hours to just wait.
Yeah. No, I was talking to
There's
Dog
a lot
about
to it.
some of the safety stuff that you have to think about because
So
of ice.
much.
And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to listening to the show. But because you had
I'm
such
ice
a,
dive certified now, by the way.
Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
crazy. Of
Because-
all the people. who-
because you of all the people,
I want to be in
that is true.
85-degree water all the time.
That is true. But because you had such a horrible experience, that's when I'm like, now I want to do it.
Well,
I want
I
to
had
see
a-
if it's that bad.
I had I loved part of it.
No, the
but
class was great, but the dive itself wasn't that great.
it was harsh. Do I want to do that dive again? No,
No.
it's brutal. And I'll explain why. But there are people, by the way, that love this stuff.
Yeah.
So they absolutely be like, Woody, that's not fair, man. We love ice diving. Okay. And it's not for me, but
Right.
I'll explain why. But other people may love
But
it.
just like we love cave diving, and other people are like,
That's
no chance, no interest, I'm
Yeah.
out.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm looking forward to that episode. But for now, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any comments or questions for me or Woody, you can always reach us at info@divetalkmedia.com. But other than that, safe diving, everyone.
Safe diving.